Attention.
Let's talk for a second. Higher ed is moving fast, and not everything we're doing is keeping pace. Either you move with the future, or you get left behind. Insights EDU is where leaders find out what actually works. February 17th to 19th in Fort Lauderdale. Register at insightsedu.com. Ellucian Live 2026 is taking place April 19th through 22nd, 2026 in Denver, Colorado. Advancing infinite possibilities. Turn innovation into action with AI-powered solutions, student-first strategies, and a global network of fellow leaders at Ellucian Live 2026, higher education's premier global technology conference. It's going to be
amazing.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Irvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. We are back on another episode. And I have a co-host who has been a co-host before, has been a guest before. She's been on other EdUp Experience spin-off podcasts. So we know her well. She is Dr. Lenitra Berger, and she is Associate Professor of History and Arts and Director of the African and African American Studies Program at George Mason University. Lenitra, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Elvin. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And so let's bring in our guest today. She is Dr. Joy Connolly, and she's the president of the American Council of Learned Societies, ACLS. Joy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Elvin. Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. We know everybody's busy, especially this time of the year. So we always appreciate people taking time to meet with us so we can get to learn about what you do and how you do it. So, Joy, tell us, what do you do and how do you do it?
I will tell you in as few words as I can, although I will lead off by saying my colleagues and I joke all the time about how difficult it is to describe ACLS in a sentence because we do a number of things. We support learned societies. As you said in our title, we're the Council of Learned Societies. We support over 80 member societies that span the humanities and social sciences, from history to philosophy to literary studies. And I'll stop the list there because I'll leave out a field and I'll upset someone out there. But we support the full range of fields across the humanities and social sciences through our member societies, which in turn support their members who are faculty and graduate students and people outside academia all over the country, all over the world. Some of them are a few hundred people. Some of them are tens of thousands of people. So the support of societies is one big piece of our work. We also support scholars through fellowships and grants and other forms of support. We distribute on average about $25 million each year. And we support, finally, schools. We have member institutions and 2 networks, our Research University Consortium of about 40 leading research universities across the country. And we support them through their deans of humanities and deans of arts and sciences, but also through faculty, graduate students, administrators. They're a key piece of our membership. So as I said, hard to explain in a sentence, but we seek every single day to advance humanistic knowledge, mostly inside the academy, but also outside of academia as well. We know and we are very proud and happy in the fact that humanistic knowledge of, again, all the fields I mentioned and beyond is produced everywhere, not just in colleges and universities.
Fantastic. So I'll follow up before I pass it over to Lenitra. Tell me a little bit about you. How long have you been there? What was your journey to get to where you are? And since you've been there, give me a story about something that you have done that you found to be very impactful. That was like, oh my God, or you're very proud of. Like, oh, I love this story. I love telling this story. So show me what you got.
Oh, thank you. And it's going to be difficult to choose. So I came to ACLS in 2019, having come from a few years at the City University of New York at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, which is the college, as we call it, that collects just about all the PhDs, doctoral programs in the City University system, and many master's programs too. I came to the Graduate Center as provost and then became acting president there for about a year. It's a fantastic university, jewel in the crown of New York State and the whole nation. Before that, I was a dean for humanities and a professor of classical studies at New York University. So I've been in New York for 21 years. Before that, I taught at Stanford and the University of Washington, fantastic colleagues out on the West Coast as well. So I will say I was one of those scholars who, when my colleagues and friends, academic friends, started saying to me when I was still an assistant professor that, oh, I'd be a good chair or might be a good dean or a good administrator. And I used to shriek and run away screaming and say, no, I'm never going to do that. I am going to be a scholar and a teacher. I love students. I love teaching, engaging with students, watching people follow their curiosity and passion. I love research and writing. But I did come to see over the years that that academic administration was intellectually interesting. It was really rewarding, helping other people succeed and doing what they wanted to do. I should mention now a word that guides me. It's a Sanskrit word, mudita, and it means the opposite of Schadenfreude, which is, of course, the German for happiness in other people's distress. Mudita is mudita is happiness, pleasure in other people's success and happiness, and that's really what I realized I was getting from the mix of research and teaching, but also administration that I was doing. So that's what put me on the path to becoming a dean, and then a provost, and then an acting college president, and then president of ACLS, where we support scholars. So that's, as I said, it's such a big long list of choices in terms of what stories of the most rewarding work, because that's really the pleasure amidst all the challenges facing humanistic scholarship and inquiry in the academy and in the world now. And we can talk about that. But amongst those challenges, there are so many rewarding stories. I'll pick out one. We started in 2020 when the pandemic hit. We started looking out over the landscape of graduate students in particular, and people who had just finished their PhD, and jobs, academic jobs, and of course jobs outside of academia, but academic jobs in particular, which is our main lane, were crumbling. There were job openings that were closed. There were departments facing reductions, and so we looked at each other on our Zoom screens, which we were just getting used to at the time, and said, what can we do? And we contacted our membership, the Research University Consortium, this at that time, as I said, still over 40 institutions. And we said to these deans and faculty there, could we work with you so that if you provide a job for a bunch of scholars for the coming year, maybe two, and provide benefits, health insurance, and so on, and we provide the stipend, their salary, could we collaborate super fast to get a bunch of scholars placed? And I remember vividly talking to one of my colleagues here who said, Joy, it takes us usually between 15 to 24 months to set up a new fellowship, a grant, competition like this and get the right people placed. And I said, we got to do it in like 3 months. And we did. And so we placed over 40 scholars that first year, another group the second year, another cohort, and we continued the program for 3 years, ending up with 2-year placements for scholars. And I actually just got a message from someone the other day who's Mark Lettany, a terrific scholar at the University of Washington, who had his book featured in the New Yorker last week, and he wrote it. He finished it on this fellowship when he had a job through our work, through really my colleagues' incredibly hard work. So that's the kind of thing that keeps me up and gets me up in the morning, gets me to the office, and keeps me excited. There's always that success around the corner.
So I love that. And it's kind of like, this is why I do what I do, right, Lenitra? Over to you.
Thank you for that question. And thank you, Joy, for sharing that story, because I think it's a really good example of how the humanities can pivot quickly. Sometimes there's an assumption that the humanities is slow and resistant to change, but I think that COVID gave us a lot of great examples of how we were able to use our ability to work with complexity and think about difference and pivot very quickly to serve people. So my question for you is, we've got through COVID and now we're in another different and still challenging time for the humanities and social sciences. And I see ACLS as a leader in terms of being a voice for faculty in the humanities during this time. So can you tell us about some of the things that you're doing to help bring the important issues to the world about what's challenging for the humanities right now?
Happy to do that. Not happy about the challenges, but happy to meet them as best we can with all the tools we can. And mainly that's community, ARC. And I think a lot of people are realizing that community and alliances is crucial to making the world together, the world that we all want to live in. So a few things. We brought a lawsuit, a litigation to redress the damage that was done by DOGE, by the Trump administration to the National Endowment for the Humanities, which supports not only scholars in the humanities in the academy, but of course state humanities councils, which have long been a bulwark for everything from philosophy taught in early grades of school to oral history projects. I vividly remember learning about a project about opioid addiction in the Midwest that was run by a state humanities council that was both a therapy for the community, but also education about opioid abuse, and also a demonstration of the importance of articulating, telling one's story and telling it in an embedded way that's culturally alive, that's cross-cultural, that's not just in English, that's in more than one language, that's truly inclusive in the best way that the United States has been at its best moments. So when we saw the destruction of most of the humanities councils through those cuts and through millions of dollars in cuts and grants, we litigated together with the Modern Language Association and the American Historical Association. So the three of us together brought a lawsuit, and we're waiting on that outcome. We're in the discovery process in the courts in the Southern District of New York. So fingers crossed on a positive outcome for the scholars and scholarship that will be, again, inside and outside the academy, that we hope will be strengthened by that suit. Another thing we're doing is working together with our member societies and many scholars on a project that I can't say was driven by this moment specifically, but it's been shown to be absolutely needed because of the ways in which this presidential administration has exacerbated the pressures, cuts and reductions in funding, and also just a lack of respect and a real lack of vision for what education is and what it's for, what its purpose is. This project is also undertaken by chance, really, although not just by chance, because they're fantastic people, with our colleagues at the Modern Language Association and the American Historical Association, and also the Society for Biblical Literature, an area study, multiple interdisciplinary area studies that focuses on the culture, literature of religious study, Judeo-Christianity in particular. It's a big society and very interesting because it includes members from outside of academia as well as inside. So the four of our organizations, the three member societies in ACLS, are working on this project generously funded by the Mellon Foundation called Doctoral Futures. And it seeks in the next 3 years to build a bold set of recommendations for reform of doctoral education, precisely to recruit and train and support scholars who are better equipped to meet moments like we're living through now, because we don't see we're not rainbows and unicorn people. We don't see a bright future just around the corner. We see it down the road a ways if we work toward it together. So this project is seeking to not prescribe or order people around or harangue people, but to present doctoral programs all over the country with a list of recommendations through which they can educate and sustain students who are going to be out there fighting the good fight, proselytizing for our fields, connecting with students where they are. And the last thing I'll say about that program is we hope to sustain a next generation of PhDs who are better equipped than I certainly was coming out of graduate school in 1997. I didn't know the first thing about what jobs my undergraduate students might get after college. I didn't really think, because I was passionate about my research and everything about the reward system of graduate school and the, faculty reward system let me focus on my niche, which is not bad. It's not an evil thing. It's a good thing, but it needed some recalibration. And over the years, with the help of a lot of people, built up more sensitivity to what my students needed, what their parents needed to understand. So it's indirect, I know, but for the long game of building alliances inside and outside academia, and helping get the message out about the crucial core value of an educated populace that understands and is curious about history, languages, ethics, political theory, that understands what democracy is, that understands the importance of literature and the arts and helping us connect with each other and understand ourselves. So that's what we hope the Doctoral Futures Project will do, that it will build on what's already out there. Fantastic educational programs, fantastic faculty. This is, again, not about saying that the current condition of things is terrible and needs fixing. It's about connecting many points of innovation and creativity and strengthening the whole system.
I love that you're focusing on doctoral education, because I agree with you. There's some great models at individual institutions, but it would be nice if there was something much more systemic so that more graduate students could come out not only prepared to be scholars in their fields, but to really be strong contributors in the university and beyond. We don't learn in graduate school that after you're finished with your graduate education, you have to serve on university committees, you have to review tenure cases, you have to mentor and advise students. And it's very hard to learn all of those skills as soon as you arrive as an assistant professor and you're still trying to do your own research. So I do think that there's a lot that we can do to help faculty be much more prepared to contribute beyond just their own scholarship. I have another question for you based on your own work as a scholar. So I know you're a classicist and you've been an administrator for quite a while now, but is there anything about your research that you've done, the books that you've written, the things you've seen in your own field work that have really shaped you as an administrator?
Oh, thank you for answering that question, because I think I rarely have the chance to talk about this, but I think about it all the time. I started working, as a graduate student, on ancient rhetoric and oratory, and public speaking, public communication especially in the Roman Republic in the first century BCE. So, over 2,000 years ago. But I found in the way Roman writers wrote and thought about how we communicate as people, and they were mostly talking about wealthy men. I don't want to make any, secret of that. They weren't talking about humanity in an inclusive way, the way we would now, but they're thinking nonetheless about what it meant to be able to speak to people, to connect with people. They saw that as an essential element of being human and something they thought was unique to humans. They didn't have much respect for animal communication. I will say, again, we think differently now, most of us, but in what they saw about the capacity for humans to connect through language, and language used in complicated ways. Of course, they understood it was a double-edged sword, that language can be used to mislead and to misrepresent, to stir up emotional connections that lead to violence and hatred. But they also saw the power of communication to bind us together as a community and to serve as, they saw spaces, especially public spaces of communication, as places where ideas about what we might be as a community, as a collective, could be sifted and argued over and debated. They weren't idealists, which I really liked. I mean, Roman thinkers are very pragmatic. They tend to have a pretty bleak view of what humans can do to each other, which calibrates their hope and aspiration for the kind of community, we could be. Again, their vision is not mine. It's not ours today. But anyway, I saw in ancient Roman thinking about communication, something crucial, I think, that I brought to my administrative work, or I try to bring to that, which is habits of listening to other people and understanding the significance of language and the importance of the study and reflection of what language can do for us as, as individual people, but also living in community with other people. It is how we connect. And whether it's written or spoken, just attention to it and the material conditions of it. I spend a lot of time thinking about, if I have a meeting, what kind of room are we in? What kind of, how are we situated next to each other? Can people see one another? What's our body language like? Roman thinkers about rhetoric and oratory were all over this topic. And interestingly, if you look at business or self-help books now, you see exactly the same recommendations, really, that you see 2,000 years ago about modulation of the voice, about listening to people. It's really fascinating. I mean, there are some ways in which there is nothing new under the sun. So that, but that work and the capacity of speaking together and listening to one another to connect people, I just believe in heart and soul and try to bring that to my administrative work.
I love that. And I love that there are some questions that we ask that have been asked from the beginning of time. And that leads me to my next question, which is about the time we're in, December. Many faculty are grading exams. They are preparing to submit their final grades. And so many people are concerned about AI and how much of a student's exam or assignment has been written by AI. So speaking of communications, how is ACLS responding to AI or helping guide faculty through navigating AI?
Let's go
to insightsedu.com. Remember that URL, because let's be honest, how much of what you're doing at work right now is actually working? It's time to inject fresh ideas and effective strategies. And Insights EDU is for these leaders that want to see results. The conversations are direct, the sessions are outstanding, and the people in the room are there to solve real problems, not protect the status quo. Insights EDU 2026 is February 17 to 19 in Fort Lauderdale. No fluff, no recycled playbooks, just what works now. Register today at insightsedu.com.
Attention.
It's time to register for Lucian Live, April 19th through 22nd, 2026 in Denver, Colorado, advancing infinite possibilities. And it's higher education without limits. Don't just keep up with change, lead it. Higher ed leaders from around the world are coming together at Lucian Live 2026. Across 4 unforgettable days, you'll discover new ways to meet students where they are and make the most of your technology through inspiring sessions and hands-on demos. Together, we're leveraging AI to create deeper human connections, support every student's journey, and open doors to lifelong learning. See you in Denver. Register now at elive.elucian.com.
We find ourselves right now, and you have touched on just a central question, absolutely something people are so preoccupied with for good reasons. For this moment right now, we're serving as a forum for hearing people's concerns and encouraging, not that they need it. Our member societies are all the way out there, I have to say, with holding space for people to discuss this online and in their annual meetings, many of which will be happening in the coming couple of months, given the cycle of the academic season. We're also exploring a couple of programs that we hope to find funding for in the next year that will formalize this a bit more, that will allow us to gather people around the particular question of balancing student and indeed everyone's use of these tools with our sense of what's really crucial about the knowledge and especially the teaching that we have to offer. I would say, so that's a wordy way of saying we're not Luddites. We believe people are using this technology. We are not trying to say, everybody stop. that's nuts in my view. People are going to use it. We have to find ways to think about what's unique about and distinctive about what we offer that can complement or in some ways keep AI at bay. Not that it's the enemy, but it is designed by people who don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, I would say. They want us to stay on our devices. They want to frack our brains, as some people are saying. They want us to spend more money and spend our attention, give our attention and care to the products that they're selling. So, we got to be clear-eyed about this. And that's not a Luddite thing to say that this technology is designed by people who are not about us. They're about making money off this new development. So that's not evil, but it just has to be said as a fact. So that said, I would say to preview our thinking about this and going back to the word I used, attention, care, stewardship. I think one of the things that humanistic education teaches students is how to be with themselves, how to think in a reflective way, in a balanced way about themselves with the world in perspective, the world of the past, the world of the future, the world of the present, the many worlds of past, present, and future, and to think seriously about the degrees in which we are not islands, as a poet once said, no man is an island, and to think about our interdependence, and to think about how we can engage more fully in our interdependent relationships with other human beings, with the environment, with the other living things on this planet. And that involves, habits of thought and reflection and curiosity that make AI, large language models a useful tool, but they can't do that work with us. So, or for us, that they could do it with us, but not for us, I should have said. So, I think I'll say the words like process, phrases like, training the process of thinking. These are the thoughts that are guiding us. When it comes to exams and paper assignments, traditional papers, I would say that I've come to think of them as outcomes that have gotten more attention and weight than they really deserve. That when as in your own teaching, as I remember from my teaching, when we assign a paper, the point for us is not the paper itself as an object, right? As an artifact. It's the thinking that goes into it that we want to. And so that, I think, is, what we need to emphasize with students, that we're not looking at that paper that the AI large language model helped them polish to, a point of perfection. We want to walk with them on the journey of thinking through the arguments, thinking through the evidence, sifting truth from falsity. And we'll, I think, need to come up with better ways to measure that, to monitor that, to support that than the final outcome of the paper. So if it, insofar that the large language models, AI, make us improve the work we're doing with students and our own research, and I believe it already is, and it will continue to do, that's a good thing. We can always improve.
I agree. And, this semester I taught Introduction to African American Studies, which is a really fun class to teach. And this semester I asked students to consider a really deep moral question, which was about Nat Turner and the Nat Turner Rebellion. So we spent several weeks talking about it, and big questions like, when is violence justified? When are the outcomes justified? And because we're in Fairfax, Virginia, this is a hyper-local issue, but it had so many national implications. So the students gave final presentations, and they could choose topics, and many of them chose to talk about Nat Turner. And I was really struck by how much they had thought about this question, that there was not really a right answer in quotation marks, and how difficult it was for them to hold all of these complexities at the same time. but I was heartened to see that they can do it. They can do it. They are capable of doing this, and that this is really important work for them to be doing in the classroom. So I'm heartened by what I see in the classroom, and it reminds me how important it is as humanists and scholars of the humanities to keep making students uncomfortable by having them sit with these very difficult questions.
Yes, and those, of course, are the skills that employers are going to or are have always sought and are going to continue to seek. They're the skills that we need in human life in all its many aspects. And I too, I share your sense of feeling heartened at the ways in which AI is helping clarify what's really crucial about what we do. It is not about polishing a 5-paragraph essay. It is about developing habits of curiosity and reflection and attention and critical thinking, and courage too. And what you just described is, I think, students taking a step into territory that, as you said, isn't comfortable, but with your support and help and guidance and modeling, they feel they can do it, and that's what we're here for.
I agree. I think that the ultimate career outcomes of these students comes from faculty being able to guide them to the right resources on campus. We don't all have to be experts in every career. We just have to know where to send the students. And we give them the skills, and other offices on campus help them to translate those skills into jobs. But as someone who's teaching both African American studies and art history, I have a lot of students who come in and say, my parents won't let me major in those things. They won't, I won't get a job with those majors. Has ACLS done anything that you'd like to talk about, specifically about connections to career outcomes?
Yes, more at the doctoral level than at the undergraduate level. I will say because our support historically has been for faculty and graduate students and people at the advanced knowledge production level, and not at the undergraduate level. Which is not to say that undergraduates don't do that work, but that's a huge landscape. So we have focused on the slightly later stages. But about 20 years ago, we began a program called Public Fellows. It's funded also by the Mellon Foundation, and it has a different name now, and it's changed slightly over the years, which as it should, because landscape is changing and grant programs need to change with them. But the Leading Edge program, the Leading Edge Fellowship, as it's now called, places PhDs every year in a diverse set of places. They are nonprofits, not for-profit organizations at this point, but they're outside the academy. They range from radio stations to community service organizations, and a million things in between. They are the perfect example of the value, utility, and energy of humanist scholars, early career people, and active in the world, outside the classroom, and many of those PhDs, many of those fellows go on to do fantastic work outside the academy, and they are really the flag bearers, I think, in many ways, into many sectors of the value of humanistic education. I would love to do more of that work, such a project on the undergraduate level. The Mellon Foundation and other foundations are supporting more and more of that work as they see the value of internships to students. The Mellon Foundation has invested in that in wonderful ways. It helps give students and their parents, as you said, confidence that their student, in whom they've usually invested a lot of the family's financial well-being, in the student's success. So it makes them feel more confident, and it allows more and more sectors, from finance to law to social work, to healthcare, to see what our students can do. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because the myth of the English major barista is frustratingly so persistent, and it doesn't match the data. It's not true. So we have to keep telling that story, because that's the true story, and these programs, help back it up with human people who are great people with great skills and vision.
I love that. I have one other question for you, which is that so many people come to the EdUp experience, they listen to podcasts because they're looking for advice or they're looking for inspiration or both. In your role, which is so important right now, do you have any advice that you could share with humanities and social science scholars, or words of encouragement, or anything that you want them to carry with them as we work through challenging times?
Oh, that's a high bar, but I'll try to meet it. And I'll say it this way. At ACLS, we have a phrase, the new academy, and we use that phrase to talk about the kind of higher education system we want to live in, and we want to help create in collaboration with others. And what is it? It's many things. It's different things, I think, for different people, but core to our vision is an academy that meets students where they are, that connects with communities, and not only connects with, but co-creates knowledge with people outside the academy, that's especially attentive to those communities and histories and areas of thought that have been historically marginalized or erased and ignored by the academy, and that in its practices, emphasizes and values and rewards, including materially, through things like for faculty merit review and tenure or contract renewal, habits of creativity and experiment that are tough to value in tough times, because in tough times people tend to crouch a bit and get into a little bit of a defensive posture. It can feel easier and safer to defend what we know or what we think we know, and what we think is best because it's familiar. But this is really a time for people to link arms around new possibilities, and so creativity, experiment, and above all, the commitment that knowledge is a public good. And so more openness, I think, in the academy to getting the message out there, more attentiveness to people who work in public libraries and museums, to K through 12 teachers, just building alliances. We have become, for good reasons and with some good benefits coming out of it. This isn't evil by any stretch, but we have gotten a little comfortable in the academy with talking to ourselves, in our community of scholars, and turning outward more, being courageous in our convictions that what we do has value. And I don't want to sound corny, but talking to people in the grocery line, talking to our doctors and dentists and accountants and friends and PTA, and about what we do with the same excitement we bring to our students and our research. It's in my experience, 99 out of 100 people will respond with curiosity. They might be a bit bemused, but at first, but they're curious and excited, and they value the work. That's the last thing I'll say, and by way of kind of exhortation and advice, to remember that 100 surveys show that Americans, I'm just speaking about America for now, because that's where we are. Americans value history. They care about languages and philosophy, religion. They love wrestling with big questions. They sign up for extension courses. They go to museums in great numbers. They go to national parks. They care about culture and humanistic material. Where they have difficulty is, and where the survey numbers show Americans are confused or don't really understand the landscape, is when it comes to academic professional work in these fields. So that tells me we have work of connection to do, but we can do it. And many people do, of course. It's a matter of strengthening what we're doing in places all over the country. So I hope that's helpful.
I think it's very helpful. And habits of creativity and experimentation, Elvin, I think we have our catchphrase of the conversation, because that was perfect. Sometimes I joke with my students that I'm either preparing them for date night, if they can show off their art history skills at a museum, or the final Jeopardy question that will win them $1 million. So, there's all sorts of reasons why these humanities courses and this knowledge is helpful. But what you've described really goes very, very deeply into the core of who we are and what we value as a society, and how we can make sure that everybody in society has the ability to participate in our democracy and engage in these really difficult questions. So I really appreciate that advice.
Yeah, this has been amazing conversation. Joy, Lenitra, thank you so much. Joy, one last question for you. Answer this in 1 minute or less. No, I'm just kidding. What do you see?
Oh,
you kind of touched upon it a little bit. So let's see. What do you see as the future of higher education?
the future of higher education is a bright one if we work together to sustain it. I see more flexibility, more accessibility, more attention to students past the age of 18 to 22, which I think would be healthy for everybody. I see more creative organization of knowledge across the humanities and social sciences in ways that students can recognize and identify with. I see all those things, the new academy in a sense. I see all those things, though, only if we work together and we open our minds and link arms across difference, be open to criticism, and move forward with courage.
No, I love that. And I just have to say, my family model is I have a 10-year-old girl and a 5-year-old girl. And our family model is always be confident and curious. And so I love that you says curiosity over and over and over again.
Yes, me too.
It's just great. I love that.
That's great.
Yeah, what a great conversation. First, let me outro my co-host. She is Dr. Lenitra Berger. She's Associate Professor of History and Art and Director of the African and African American Studies Program at George Mason University. Lenitra, thank you again for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Elvin. And I'm so glad we had this conversation, Joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic conversation. Let me outro her. She is your guest today, ladies and gentlemen. She's Dr. Joy Connolly. She's the president of the American Council of Learned Societies, ACLS. Joy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lenitra. It was great to talk with you. Thank you, Elvin, for having me. It was a fantastic conversation. I hope I come back. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Be honest with yourself for a second. How much of what you're doing at work right now is actually working? That question came up again and again at Insights EDU last year. You guys already know this isn't your typical higher ed conference. And I've got to be honest, I've been to a lot of higher ed events, and Insights EDU is just different. The conversations are direct, the sessions are outstanding, and the people in the room are there to fix real problems, not defend the status quo. That's why Insights EDU 2026 matters. It's 3 days in Fort Lauderdale, February 17 to 19, focusing on real strategy for higher ed. No fluff, no recycled playbooks, just what works now. You can keep wasting time with what feels safe, or you can get in the room where smarter decisions are being made. Register today at insightsedu.com.
You just made the list!
Ellucian Live 2026, April 19th through 22nd in beautiful Denver, Colorado, advancing infinite possibilities. And it's higher education without limits. Don't just keep up with change, lead it. Higher education leaders from around the world are coming together at Ellucian Live 2026. Across 4 unforgettable days, discover new ways to meet students where they are and make the most of your technology through inspiring sessions and hands-on demos. Together, we're leveraging AI to create deeper human connections, support every student's journey, and open doors to lifelong learning. See you in Denver. Register now at elive.ellucian.com. It's going to be
amazing.